My interest in dreams came because I was suffering terrible depression, and I had joined the Rosicrucian Order. And one of the things they said that you can get a lot from dreams, and I thought about that, and then I read a couple of books. One was by Leslie Weatherhead, very practical and helpful. Another one was by somebody I can't remember his name, but they were very impressive. And so I started really writing down my dreams and trying to understand them. I didn't really understand at first, but I tried. Wow, got to think about that. Well, I can remember now. There was this. I was working as a photographer in London, and there was this young girl I fancied actually, and uh, and so she was interested in dreams, and so we actually tried working with them, trying to understand them, and it was quite successful. She got something from it, and I began to see there was a lot more in the dreams than people take. Wow, what are dreams? My God, that's a big question. Um, Slowly, over the years of working with dreams, I see that they are a process of life itself. We are a life process. We are a life process, actually. But the process of dreams is also a process of life itself. And people think there's a lot of rubbish talked about dreams, how we're taking it in from everyday life and readjusting. It's not like that at all, because it's life speaks to us through our dreams. But the thing is, speaking to us, life doesn't speak in language. It speaks to us directly as emotions, as insights. So for us to understand this, there's this formless impulse from the life process, and it comes into our brain, and there we take on images, we take on all sorts of images, and so a dream is a communication from our core self that we put in all sorts of images because we've collected feelings about them or associations with them, and that's how dreams work. And dreams in themselves are a communication with the process of life, I think. I've got to tune into another part of my brain. Hold on. The thing is that dreams. Oh, I've got it. There was experiments done with dreams, and with human beings, they stop the dreams. They prevent them from dreaming, because when people start dreaming, their eyes move rapidly while they slept. So they stopped them dreaming. Every time they started to dream, they stopped it. Now, within a few days, they suffered mental breakdowns, but they couldn't continue because they couldn't harm the human beings. With animals, they continued. All the animals died. So I feel that dreams are very important, because to seeing that the breakdown in human beings, if we deal with dreams, we can stop that continual breakdown. It's like a homeostatic process. Like when we get hot, we perspire. That's a homeostatic process. And so dreams are a way of stopping that from getting to a critical point. That's not necessarily to understand dreams, but if we understand them, we take that to a new level, because we can change our way of feeling and thinking. Well, it goes back a very long time. It's recorded because we need to understand that we don't know how far back it goes, we only have written words, and so in Greece they had temples where people were led to. Well, they had illnesses and they went there to dream, and in the dream temples they went through a ritual of washing and making themselves ready to dream, and when they had a dream, then they'd be led to understand it. I don't know exactly how they did that, but it was temples all over the place for that very reason. But they used snakes a lot as well. I don't know why, but I understand why, but I don't understand how that helped them to understand their dreams. But after that, of course, well, people have written about dreams for thousands of years, but most of it is real rubbish. I mean, people would say it's all about good and bad luck, because in the Babylonian period, it was all about, is this a good dream or is it a bad dream? And so they had all interpretations about, is it good for me or bad for me in some way? And they wrote dream books that are quite rubbish in terms of actually people who then, nowadays, who understand their dreams. It doesn't work like that. Well, at first, I worked with individuals, and it wasn't interpreting them. I helped them to explore their dreams, which is a different matter than interpretation. Interpretation is head stuff. We can, I think about that, or that means that. And that isn't interpretation. I mean, that is interpretation, but I was fortunate to read some books that weren't working in that way, and the people actually understood, and it transformed their lives. And so Weatherhead's book was like that. It was very practical. He wasn't really a psychiatrist. He was a Methodist minister, but he worked with it very well. But the other people, the suggestion was that the people could understand their own dreams. And this was the way I worked. And at first with individuals, so I didn't interpret them, but the more dreams I saw and their interpretation, I began to understand there's a language here, that people have a language of their dreams. And so then I was asked to go to Daily Mail and work for them, and I agreed. And the people sent me in hundreds of dreams, and that was fantastic because I began to see patterns in it. Like one woman, she threw her babies, young children, over a bridge, and that was the end of them. And this killing of one's own children, it's a thing that people do in dreams, and it's like how do we feel when our children become independent? It's a form of killing them up in a way. Killing them up, we're killing children. We're killing our connection with them, because if we connect so strongly with our children, we're constantly worried about how they're going to do and what's going to happen to them and so on. And women, particularly, have heightened sense of anxiety about their children, and this is, I saw that and many other things from the 1,000 People's Dreams. So that was another way I worked by. They put it in newspaper, my remarks. Quite a business, because I had to do it in such a small amount of words. It was quite a test, really. Yeah. Well, what I saw as I began to explore dreams, I realised that you enter a different state of mind. On normal, waking awareness is one thing, but people call it the unconscious. We go to a different level, and it's a completely different world. And I saw that most of it was to do with homeostatic process. It's self-regulating, really. And wow, how did I get into it? My God, that was a big question. Because I had need to take time with this, because I was still trying to break free of my depression and other things, and I had tried yoga, I tried meditation for years, I tried all sorts of things. Nothing really was satisfying. It helped a little bit, but then what I did, I decided, look, I haven't got the answer. I'm looking for something, and I'd say I've got to look there, and there's just my ideas. And if I don't know what I'm looking for, what the hell do you do? So I gave up looking and struggling, because I was doing yoga tremendous amounts every day, hours of work. But I realised it was difficult to give it up, because I had had a dream that was very explicit. In the dream, I was walking across moorland, and people were following me. I was their leader in the dream, but I didn't know where I was going. But we were exploring. So we went on, and people followed me, and I had a dog with me, my dog. And we got to this barbed wire fence, and there was a sort of a rabbit. I said to my dog, get it. The dog went after it. It went to bite the rabbit, but this hare, it turned into a magnificent hare about 3 feet high. And my dog really backed off from it, and the hare looked at me and said, where are you going? As dreams do. Mm. I said, well, I felt, what are you asking me for? I felt, I had looked lots of books with methods telling you how you do it and how it works and all the rest of it. And I thought, people, this is another one of those authorities telling you what to do. And most of it doesn't bloody work for me, or, So I said, look, you're just another bloody authority, telling I should go back. And so it looked at me, disappeared. Where's it gone? And then about 30 seconds later, it suddenly reappeared. And I thought, wow, this one knows what it's doing. So it said, listen, it said, what you're looking for is yourself. You can't find that out there. You have to find it in yourself. And it said, you'll find it by living your life. You discover yourself by living and responding to the events that you meet. That was a fantastic dream. And the thing was, I had been trying all sorts of things and messing myself about, meditating and such. And so it was blooming hard to stop it. It's like a habit. I got to search. I've got to find it. So I gradually gave up, and it was a blooming struggle. But anyway, eventually, each day, I would sit, and without any meditation, there was no aim, no goal, no hope. I just sat. But I felt like if there was something, it would be like a friend. I imagine myself standing on the corner in Tottenham Court Road outside the cinema. And if the friend came and tapped me, I realised I would know. I would know what it is. And so I sat like that for quite a long time, over a period of time. And then one day, I got out of bed to go to the toilet. It was still dark, I suppose. I came back to bed, and as I was getting to bed, this voice from everywhere in the room said, "You've asked how God touches the human soul. Now watch closely." I watched really madly. I couldn't sleep then. I was hoping. But in a couple of days, some friends of mine got together, and, I have to tell the story a bit better than that. My friends got together because a friend, Sheila Johns, had asked me to teach her yoga. I said, how can I teach you? I said, I'm so bloody, I messed up myself. So how can I teach you? I said, look, let's try an experimental group, just the two of us. But then another friend joined, so the three of us, and we started exploring not just doing postures, do it like that. That's perfect, or that's rubbish. We try to understand, how does a body feel when you're a snake or a seed or whatever. And on the second time we met, dreams at that time were, I was going to the war. I was going to marching with the soldiers. We're going to battlefront, and then on the day that this happened, I went over the top. I wasn't scared of bullets anymore. I got up there and faced it, and then this happened. I started shaking, and I thought, well, I must be terribly cold. So, huddled up like this, and because three of us there. And I thought, well, the next time it happened again. But this time I got jerseys up and I didn't feel cold. I thought, I'll let it happen. So I lay back, and the most extraordinary thing happened. I allowed my body to do whatever it liked. And so I moved, my hands were strapped by my side, my head was pulled back, my mouth was clamped open, and I relieved having my tonsils out. I don't know if I didn't have anaesthetic or what it was, but it was, dramatic. I was calling out for my mother and such. But before that, at that period, I'd had a neck tension so badly. Every time I lay back to go to sleep, my head would pull right back. And I used to relax it up. I'll relax it, Ridiculous, really. People relax away their tensions. It's just a surface muscle. What had caused that tension was a trauma from when I was 6-year-old. I was pulling away from the surgeon, pulling back. And instead of allowing it, I was relaxing it away. And when it happened, my head was pulling back madly. And from there on, that day, something happened enormous, because I never before experienced spontaneous movement like that, because it moved. I could stop it. I could have stood up at any time and stopped it. But in allowing it, it's like you allow the dream process to break through. You go through that barrier. And that was an enormous thing. And so that neck tension never occurred to me again. And that was so amazing. I said, let's do it every week. And it carried on. That was what I called self-regulation, yeah. It relates to a religious worldview, because when you really open up to that process of life in you, at first it was me dealing with my traumas, like that tonsil operation. As a child, we don't realise how bloody painful it is or scary it is. So that was a trauma that I dealt with. But afterwards, I call it, we enter blue skies, because all that darkness is in us, and that needs to come out. People don't realise, they're all looking for the beautiful part. I want it so spiritual and wonderful. But then they're forgetting they're full of crap, honestly. A lot of it. I called something recently public toilet number 1. That's the public. They've got so much rubbish in them, they don't realise. But the religious side of it came slowly, and the first time it happened was I was having weekly sessions, and I started doing, I suppose, like stretching. Well, movements that began to move me about, squatting down, moving about. I thought, what's this preparing me for? And then it stopped. And then I went through a whole process of like creating something. I created a world. It's what I felt like, creating this world. I carried it on my shoulders. This world was so bloody heavy. I crushed me, I lay flat on my back. But then little life started working on me and started getting stronger and stronger. And I got up and I threw this world away. It took me 3 months to understand what that was about. I was talking to somebody and it suddenly clicked into place. It was my religious beliefs. I've been stuck in them. And silly thing is, the life in me said, throw the bloody lot away. Because, I was destroying myself. It crushed me. Trying to live the good life, the spiritual life, the perfect, rubbish really. And anyway, that was the first part of it. But towards the end of that, towards the end of that session where I'd thrown that world away, I stood up and it was as if a light hit me, it was a light, and I was holding my hands out and saying, it's like I got chains on my hands. I was saying, can you please take these chains off me? And it doesn't happen, not like voice talks to you, but it's something talks to you and it's very impressive. And he said, Tony, I've never chained you. You did that to yourself. Wow, that was amazing statement. How could I cause that? Well, I did. But what happens is the more you open up, the more you find a religion, a real religion in you. God isn't outside of us; it's inside of us, and we have been bloody programmed to believe it's all out there. God's out there. We've got to do something to be perfect or something ridiculous. We're it. We're fucking well it. And how can anybody get to that point? We're all told we're all sinners. Well, that's a good start, isn't it? They're all bloody sinners. So how do you get from there? You have to open up to yourself to find it. You have to open up, to go through that darkness until you find the blue skies. And that is a wonderful, wonderful experience. For me, it was life-changing. Well, wonderful it was. Anyway, you can't believe people knew it in 2,000 years ago because they started it. They did nothing. They let it happen. They spoke in voices. They were drunk or whatever. And they found something wonderful, as I found, because there is a religious experience. But it's not about God out there. It's about the God inside of us. And Christian Church has really rubbed it in that we're sinners. We got to be perfect and rubbish. Anyway, I found religion, and it was a wonderful experience. It's completely personal and subjective, I suppose, but people can't believe that subjectivity can change your life. That experience can change your life, but it does. Wow, a single truth common to all religions, God. There is, but most religions stamp on it. We've been taught how to behave, what to believe, how to do it. There's so much rubbish piled on us. We are it. We are it. I mean, life, nowadays life, they're looking for lives on other planets. It's fucking ridiculous. We're life, and that is an amazing thing. How do we do? We can't even know. How do we do? How do we move our arms? How do we think? How do we wake up in the morning? We don't know. Life is doing it, and unless we touch that, unless we get past all that stuff passed on us, it's not easy, but it can be done. People are trying so hard. They're talking about yoga. They're not doing yoga. They're doing postures. Like, doing postures. That's not yoga. Yoga is a discipline that leads to that link with that other. Well, people call it higher self or spirit or whatever you call it. But it's a very real experience. And that's what yoga was leading towards, but it's not done by doing postures and so. I saw this woman who posing all the time, posing. Look, I'm doing this, I'm doing that pose. Look how wonderful I am. Well, people love that sort of stuff, I suppose. But partly those postures were to lead the person to be able to sit without moving for 3 hours. And they had to do that for every day for 3 months. And then they can give it up because it's all done. The true thing is the experience. You experience that contact. Yeah. People call it enlightenment, but, Jesus, we've been told that there was a person, Jesus, who lived, and wonderful person, walked on water, And listen, 1,400 years before that, there was a person who did all exactly the same. But before that even, the Egyptians had a virgin who gave birth to Horus and such. It's a story that everybody who opens up relives because it's in us. It's the one. It's a story of us, really. I mean, anyway, Jesus. I had this when I was practicing self-regulation, or as I call it now, live stream. We opened up as a group then. Just allowing whatever movements or feelings came. And one day I had this experience that I had blood on my hands. It was like I felt I'd killed somebody. It was very real, and I didn't understand how I could feel that, how it happened to me. I thought it was past lives or something like that. But so next week I didn't try to understand that, but we opened to whatever's going to happen. And I was standing, and then images came to me. It was like a living dream. These curtains, massive curtains, were a part of the curtains, and this enormous sky full of stars was there. And one fell down. I went in search of it. I was so curious. I wanted to find out what it was, and it was a baby. It was a baby. I mean, it's incredible thing. It was a baby, and the whole heavens would come into it, and. It wasn't a particular baby, it was every baby. We told it's one baby. Jesus is not, it's fucking all of us that come into us, but our body, our beliefs, our opinions stand in the way of it. Anyway, I fell down in front of that baby. I was so moved. And then after that, a scene changed like in a dream. And now I was standing on a road. It wasn't a paved road, it was a dusty road, and people waiting. And this man was coming along, and he came to me. He came to me. He took my hand, and I felt so much love. I couldn't stand it. I fell over. I couldn't bear that amount of love. I wasn't used to it. And he said, "I make you my disciple." And he walked on. And that was... I was so full of it. I touched everybody's head. I wanted to pass it on to them. That was how I met Jesus. Jesus wasn't a person. It was the best in me. That's what it was a strange feeling, because I thought, this must be beyond me. Something beyond me. But then it wasn't beyond me. It was the best in me, and I had killed it. That's with blood on my hands. I killed it. We live that story. If we open up to, we live it all again. We deny it, we crucify it, we do every bloody thing to it, but that we've been taught it's happened in the past. It doesn't happen. It's the story of life. How we crucified. Well, that was my first meeting with Jesus, or Christ, as I call it, not Jesus, with Christ, and it happened several times in my life. Wonderful experiences. That was religion. That is real religion, because you meet it. You don't really read the story or chant it in songs and that. That's by the way. I had a dream once, years ago, where in the dream I was in a village, and the church in the village had absolutely collapsed, fallen down, just in ruins. And so I and other people were looking, finding what happened, and just where the porch was, where you went into the church, I was clearing, and there was this beautiful cup or chalice, and it shone. It actually shone. And people had hidden it away. They'd hidden this wonderful shining, and for years people have been singing hymns and rubbishy, kneeling and praying. And yet that chalice, that living light, you sit near it, and it penetrated you. Anybody could. It didn't matter. Oh dear. It didn't matter whether you were a prostitute or a bloody deacon or whatever. That light penetrated you and changes you. You didn't have to be perfect to sit near it, because you couldn't avoid it. Anyway, that gave me a different idea of what the church had done. They'd bloody hidden it away. They had literally avoided telling people that they've got it inside them. They've got it inside them. If you find it, it's a wonderful treasure. We got stories about it. The dragons hiding a treasure, and of course the Christians tell you you got to kill the blooming dragon. You kill the dragon, but that is the life force. If that is life itself, you kill it. You kill a very precious part of you, and that dragon guards a treasure, and that's the treasure that you find. That wonderful light of. I haven't got real. I've tried to express it in words, but it's difficult really to understand it. It's a wonderful fucking thing. Oh dear. It's literally transformed my life because I don't have depression anymore. I do get carried away with these feelings, but that's a different matter. But anyway. That's in dreams. God, I've been told so many things. One dream that I had years and years ago, in the 60s, I think, I met this dwarf woman, small lady, and she'd never been loved, and I took her and I held her. I didn't actually penetrate her sexually or anything, but I loved her, and she grew, and it's a lovely woman, and she said, "Look, I want to show you something," and she took me to this room in the house that she lived in, and there was a massive, great big globe, a ball, like a crystal ball. But it wasn't a crystal ball. It was this something hanging in a room, and it was a portal. It was like a portal. You go through it and you're somewhere else. And she looked into it and she said, "Look, you'll never be famous." She said, "You won't be one of these sort of high fly." Well, I didn't say that, but I'm trying to think of the words of it. You never make it in a big way, but she said, "You've got work to do. You've got work to do." And she said, "That will, that will be very satisfying. Very satisfying." And that was one of many. I've been told all sorts of things in dreams, and voices talk to me as well. I heard that voice, as I said, but people are scared of the voice. I think they go mad. It's simply the bloody dream process breaking through, and if it's awful bloody stuff, it's because people go, they're put in mental institute because they hear these voices. Well, of course, they're talking a lot of rubbish because the person has been really traumatized, so it's trying to break out. But many people, there was a survey in Sweden, I think it was, people asked if they heard voices. Hundreds of people hear them. But virtually all of them said, "Look, they're so helpful to me. They're helpful to me." And so, but people get scared of it. "Oh God, he's heard voices. He must be something wrong with him." But I found that it's simply your own inner self communicating with you, really, because we're so locked in the world. Our body is so bloody blind, and we can't see what's going on most of the time. And that other self, higher self or spirit, what you call it, is difficult to describe, but it's enormous. It's like it is. If you imagine your whole memory all at once, God, you see things about yourself you never understood. But if you see where you start to go, you missed it and got it. Where you see the whole route, the map of your life, and what maybe you went up a blind alley or something. But you can see that if you watch it, it leads you, that wider self leads you towards something satisfying. Wow, God. We have been so deluded by the people who translated it. I think they're so masochistic. For instance, God. Take the word God. A man God? Come on. What? Well, this great big fellow who's looking down at us and everything like that is a rubbishy story. I think they set it about because the priesthood. Well, we've got to have the priesthood, and we've got to have the man in charge. It's not like that. In the first place, it developed out of the Hebrew religion, and the Hebrew religion says, look, when they call it a Shekinah, I think it's called Shekinah. But that room is empty. There's nothing in there. There's nothing there. That is a holy place. When I went there in a dream, I lived it. I found the way to that central place. There's nothing there. I thought, I worked so bloody hard to find the contact. There's nothing here. But the thing is that nothing is everything, because everything cannot be something. You can't say, look, it's a dog or a cat or a man or a woman or whatever. It's everything. So you can't put words to it like that. But anyway, Genesis is a wonderful. It's like a scientific documentary almost of human life. Because at first, it's saying that we lived in a heavenly world where there was no difficulty. Well, we were like that. We were animals, for God's sake. We grew out of animals. Animals don't have worry or probably worry about getting the next meal, but I need to preface this with understanding. There was a woman who was, when she was 3, she'd learnt one word, I think, or 2 or whatever it was water. It rained in...
Helen Keller, wasn't it?
Helen, thank you. Helen Keller. It was Helen Keller, what a woman she was. Now, she lived for a life without having any knowledge of words or she had human contact, but she couldn't communicate. There was no communication with her. And so that happened until 11, when this deaf and dumb teacher took her over and tried to communicate with her. But at first she couldn't get it. But one day the teacher put her hand under the water and said, water. Well, that triggered the whole beginning of her life, really, her beginning of understanding words. Now, words are like a massive bloody computer program, which when it feeds into us, it changes us. It changes our consciousness. Our consciousness isn't by itself, doesn't have self-awareness. Now, she said that when she got that first world, she said she became her for the first time. What is amazing, I find about her statement, she said that before that, there was nothing. She said she didn't feel anything. There was no hurt, there was no pain, there was nothing, because there wasn't a self there to feel it. No self. But once you got words, you think, I have a self. I'm me, I'm this, I'm that. And you have a self. Now, that has so much in it, because most people say, we've tortured those animals. She said, I was an animal. I didn't feel anything. I felt it, but it wasn't the self there to feel anything. That's an extraordinary statement, because she was an animal. Now, other people who had the same thing, there was a wolf boy recently, and the thing is that he was left too long. He didn't have he wasn't taught one word. Now, she had that word, and that after 11, most people at 11, they can't, once they've gone past 7 or something, they cannot become human beings. People think they're a human because they're born, oh, I'm Joe or Mary or whatever. That's ridiculous. We are given a personality by our parents, by calling us name and treating us as a person. She wasn't like that. Now, the wonderful thing was that the wolf boy, he's still in hospital. He's like a dog. He eats raw meat. He barks and howls at the moon or whatever, but they haven't become human beings. That's an extraordinary story. Extraordinary. We think we are so proud of being a person, we think we're it. But the story of, getting back to that story of Adam and Eve, first of all, it's about this heaven world that they lived in. There was no feeling, nothing. They lived, and Adam. People think of it as a singular word. It's not. Adam is plural. It means mankind, not a man. It's everybody, women and men. Adam represents women and men, and when I read this stuff from somebody who understands the language, it's an extraordinary story because these beings gradually through the whole evolution of animals, they came to this point of consciousness. Every creature has awareness, consciousness, but doesn't have self-consciousness. And as they were coming up to this, the story about the tree of evil and the woman sinned and all that is rubbish. It is not about that. The Adam represents the urge of that life force towards manhood, towards humanness, I should say, towards humanness. It was that urge, and Aisha, that's Eve, represents the ability to think for oneself. That's what it was. Now that was the turning point of Adam with Eve. It wasn't that they sinned at all. Of course, they gained this knowledge of selfhood by learning language. I don't know how that began, because how language began is in ancient things. It was a symbol, wasn't it? And symbols were, Egyptians, they got image of a bird or a snake, but that's a whole sentence. That's a whole meaning in itself. We try to understand it by looking at sentences. Oh, we've got to think of it as a sentence. What does that word mean? Anyway, I'm going on the story a bit, but when that turning point happened, they were cast out of the Garden of Eden, because Eden was the animal kingdom, and they felt naked because before they had the instincts all the time telling them what to do, how to live, how to be. That point is a terrible, wonderful, terrible thing. That point is terrible because at that point they're still slightly in contact with that inner voice. Said, why are you ashamed? Why have you left me? And they said, we're ashamed. Their nakedness wasn't nakedness of being undressed. Fig leaves weren't about fig leaves, it was something else. So people couldn't understand what it's about. So they said, oh, it must be some leaf they put on, probably a fig leaf. But it wasn't that. But so the human being is the story of how the Genesis is a fantastic story of our birth, our beginnings as human beings, and also the tragedy of it, because, I've read a little bit about really primitive tribes, and the very primitive ones have a terror of losing themselves back in the Garden of Eden. And they fight because they're only newly born, as it were. They're newly adapted to this world of self-awareness, and so they have problems with it. Well, we've gone further than that. We can't even believe that we have any, contact with it. We can't. People talk about God, but most of them don't really know it. Know it as an experience, but that story of Adam and Eve, I feel it describes what happens to us, and because of that we're an animal with all the traits, and unless we wake up to the fact that we're an animal, and we need to not train it, we need to relate to it and help it to to adapt to this life today. It's bloody scary, this life today. I mean, for that animal, it's bloody awful. I mean, look at the people who are depressed and on tablets, on drugs, on drink. You know, it's a difficult life, and so it can be scary. And lots of people commit suicide because they can't bear it. Anyway, religion hasn't done us much. Religion as a function in society hasn't done us much of a favour, really. Well, because, I'm talking about the Christian Church. It was 300 years after that birth of the Christ in human beings. Some people got to the point where they knew the Christ in them. Fantastic, and I think they lived a very different life than people live today. And I mean, in the terms of their religion, I mean. But then come the Catholic Church, big men, you know, telling they said certain books aren't allowed because they said very clearly that God is within you and you find the Christ within. Said it clearly. They banned those, and they said that God is external, the devil is external as well. Got to be careful of this bloody devil, because if it gets you, well, you had it. Little example of what I mean. I was in a Quakers, thank you. Quakers. The Quakers. And I was trying to tell them about self-regulation, or not tell them, I wanted to help them to experience it. And they were scared. And one man, who'd been a Quaker for a long time, he said, if you open like that, the devil will get you. He'd got him already. He was scared. Fear is the bloody devil in you, in a sense. He was already possessed by fear. And that's a devil to be possessed by. He couldn't let go. Anyway, that's what religion's done. It scared people silly. Another example, when I was doing national service in the RAF, I had to say what religion I was. I said, I'm a Christian. I said, what do you mean a Christian? You've got to be Catholic or Methodist or Church of England. I said, well, I'm a Christian. So I said, we better send you to the Catholic Church. So I went and met the priest, and he asked me about the catechism, you know. And he got to this question about Jesus, and he said, do you accept Jesus? I said, I hadn't had that experience of meeting Christ at that time. But I said, look, it says in the Bible that he said that we're as good as him. It says in the Bible. I forget where it says it. But I remembered, I read it, and it said that, we're all equal. Oh, it drove me mad, that. And then he said, come into the church. I said, no, I don't want to go in there because I know what you're trying to get me. You're trying to, get me to feel a different way. And he went crazy. He said, don't you realise you'll go to hell, you go to hell. He was terrified of bloody hell. Terrified. The terror in that man. And he was a priest of the church. Terrified. That's religion. Well, in 2000, Christmas, well, 5th of December 2008, I had a devastating stroke. I was, at the time I was going to London because a lady friend of mine asked me to go to a party there. And so I had gone up to see I live in Wales, but I went to London to visit her, and I was staying with a friend. I walked all the way from Paddington Station to where friend Joe lives, and I was there. Strangely enough, I asked them to look at this film by Joe Balti Taylor, which is a wonderful film about how her experience of stroke, which she took a long time to get through. And just after that, we just finished that, and my friend CJ had arrived to take me to the party, and she was standing at the bottom of a long flight of stairs. And I got my case, I was going to meet her, and suddenly, it seemed sudden to me, but it felt like something was wrong. And I felt I couldn't, my right side, I remember putting my hand on it, felt cold and dead. But it was for me, it was incredibly sudden. I'd lived quite a healthy life and dietary and exercise and everything before that, and I think I had a heart difficulty all my life. I mean, I had always sort of beating very fast, irregularly, and maybe that's caused it. But anyway, I was really knocked out, and I collapsed at the top of the stairs, and fortunately CJ shouted, "Look out, he's coming down the stairs." And Joe caught me and prevented me from falling. And I just, a very rapid response team came and looked at me and sent me to Hampstead Hospital, which was wonderful. But for me, I just felt I'd been like this before when I'd been injured or something, and I just curled up inside and just it's like you go inside somehow. And anyway, that's all I could remember until later I heard somebody saying they were going to take me for a scan, and I was conscious then, and I knew what was going on. And the strange thing is, Joe was with me and CJ was with me immediately, and that was bloody wonderful. But I was absolutely out. My body was non-functional. I mean, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I wet myself because I didn't have any control of my body. And yet, the strange thing is, I could see all. Now, I'm trained as a nurse at one period of my life, and so I nursed stroke victims, and they cried and in terrible state often, because I guess I think they're dying and they lost themselves. I didn't feel any of that. I was there. I was very fully aware, but I couldn't communicate. And I feel from this, the brain is not us. It's an organ that we use to function through the body. And I could see what was happening. I could even read the notice on the wall, but I couldn't really understand. I couldn't hold on to it because I think that's a function of the brain. Actually, it holds memory in a different way. But I felt so in touch with my family. I could see their what they felt, or their shock, their wonder, or whatever. Because different members of my family felt different things. But I was trying to express that, but nothing comes through because I like that. And worse than that. In fact, my friend CJ, she saw me, she thought I was dying, anyway. But it gave me an extraordinary sense of, look, we are not the brain. And I could see that many people with strokes, they have this feeling that they've lost themselves, the personality. I'm gone. Well, where I am. I was behind that. And the extraordinary thing was, I had an image of it. It's just an image that I created, I suppose. I was in this wonderful place of peace, wonderful peace. Above me, like a ceiling, was words. all the bloody trouble people get in with their words and thinking and what does this mean? What did he say to me? Oh, God, all that rubbish. I was absolutely free of it. And strangely enough, a friend, Dina Glauberman, a lovely woman, came to visit me, and she was sort of shocked at my condition. I could just about mumble a couple of words then. And she felt shocked that, oh my God, what's happened to Tony? He's gone. I wasn't gone. I didn't. She was worried that I was hurt or like these people crying. I didn't feel any of that. I was in peace. And she wrote later that she realised that it wasn't her that had the problem. It wasn't me that had the problem. It's her. She had all these thoughts about what stroke was. I didn't have that. And so I suppose I had that awareness because I delved into the unconscious in a way, and I was there now, and that was a very peaceful place. And I'm still sort of suffer from it in a way because I can hardly walk very far, but it's okay. But that peace has carried on with me. I don't feel one was said, I've lost everything. God, it seems so strange. I believe what it is. People identify with their body so strongly. They think the body is me, the brain's me, and that identification is so strong that when they have a stroke or something injures, they think, I'm gone, bloody hell, I'm done. The death really scares them. They pull away from it. And so my message is, don't believe that. Don't identify, that's it. Please don't identify with you as the body. The body is certainly going to die, and it has diseases and all sorts of things happen to it. Poor old body. My poor old body is wonderful, really, because it still functions quite well. But I feel inside as if I'm fully alive, but my body's not. It doesn't work very well. My speech is still stumbling a bit. But even so, it's good life because you can learn so much from it. Well, something that helped me to understand this was when I was 17, I was in the RAF in Germany, and I've read this book about people could leave their body, as they call it. And I tried like mad. I tried to project, go out or something. And I imagined myself in the room with my mother, because she lives in London. She lived at that time in London. And I wanted to visit, and nothing worked. I gave up. Giving up is such a wonderful thing, because it's happened to me so often. I gave up that time in trying to get there, and that's when I had the tonsil experience. I gave up. I must have gone to sleep. Then I had this feeling of rushing up. It was like rushing up. And then a cork out of a bottle, boom, I was free. God, the freedom, you can't imagine it. The body is such a blooming heavy weight. And I was floating above myself in the bed. And I thought, I was terrified. I thought, oh God, I'm dying. I didn't think that, but it was terrifying. And then I thought, oh, I've read about people doing this. Wow, and I burst out laughing. The tension of that feeling that I was bloody dying was so amazing that the tension then burst out in this laughter, which is, it wasn't really laughter, it was a release of tension. And then I was curled up, curled up my knees like this, and flying through the air, and really flying. And below me, I was crossing German countryside, quite fast, quite high. But one thing I noticed, one point that struck me was every so often there were these ripples coming out, like three-dimensional, not just ripples, but going out. Like when you throw a stone in the water, ripples come out, but that's not three-dimensional. It's come out, and I wondered what they were. I wondered if it's people praying or something, but I don't know. But that was amazing. Then I came to the, I was near the Dutch border at that time, so I must have crossed Holland, and I came to the sea. It was very busy there. It's massive, lots of boats come and go, and then suddenly I was at home. Bang, like that. Nothing. Now that, since I've wondered about, because I don't think anybody leaves the body. I think we are consciousness everywhere. And people say, oh, I left the body. It's dream images, actually. They dream of it. As I was dreaming all this stuff, images. But anyway, then I was standing in our sitting room. My mother was sitting knitting alone in a chair. My father wasn't there. I had a wonderful Alsatian dog, Vince. He was asleep near the gas fire. And I literally went, wow, look at this. I wasn't in my pyjamas either. I was in civilian clothes, which people say it's a copy of the body. It's not a copy, it's a dream image, because I had an idea of what I would be, and that idea produced itself in this world. And so I felt solid. I thought, wow, look at this. And so I said, Mum, look what's happening. Mum, look what's happening. And she paused for a moment, but carried on knitting, and I thought, well, that's weird. She can't hear me or see me. So I shouted. I thought maybe I'll shout. I shouted, Mum, look, I'm here. And she carried on knitting, but my dog, he heard that. He came rushing over. I'm standing behind the settee. He rushed behind and he leapt around so joyfully, because I hadn't seen me for ages. And gradually it faded. I was back in Germany, but God, the lessons I learnt from that. I learnt that. One thing I forgot. At the end of that, my mother and I felt we became one being. We just merged. It wasn't any hugging or anything like that. We merged, and there's no. So something else I realised when I was there. When my mother couldn't respond, I realised there's an upstairs there, a conscious self, who's not aware, not all she's aware of the physical world. But I realised she's got a downstairs part of it, and when I approached that downstairs, we merged. that was wonderful. It was no form or anything. We were just one being, and I felt love. And so I learnt such a lot from that, well, as I said, I don't think we actually travel anywhere. I think our consciousness is everywhere. You tune into it. I tuned into it, and bang, I was there. I didn't have to travel, but anyway, I learned a great deal from it. But it gave me a completely different view of death, because I had sort of died, and I can see why people can't understand. Where are the dead? We can't see them. Of course we can't bloody see them. Our eyes only pick up 1% of visible light. Our ears can only hear 1% of audible sound. Our nose is pretty poor as well, as far as those are concerned. So we're in the physical body is piss poor as really understanding what the world we live in. So that experience showed me that I have a different life entirely. Death, well, I realise I've experienced death several times, well, sort of death in that stroke I had was sort of dying in a way, because I couldn't move or do anything. But I've experienced it in other ways. But death, if you think of that experience of me with my mother, in bed I had pyjamas on. There I was clothed in my civilian clothes. Now I think that after death, our consciousness is fucking eternal. It can, it doesn't live or die. It experiences life in the body, but I was experiencing life without a body, but I was clothed. Now that was dreams. That's what there's a sort of I call it a bleed through from physical life into this afterlife. And most people after death, they see themselves as they were in the body, but often a lot healthier and such, because this bleed through carries through. Now, as I've explored it a lot, and the next level is where we begin to realise that we are a shapeshifter. We do any shape we like. We can be animals. That's another thing. We play at different things, but we don't have form. We're just consciousness, wonderful consciousness without form, and that's scary for most people to realise. But I had an experience with that where. I was thinking about this woman that I love very much. I was thinking about her, and in some way I could. Well, at first I was. Start again. I was in a condition where I was in blackness, no form, no sense of body. But I was still aware, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. I wonder, it feels nobody else is here as far as I can see. Is anybody else? And then I tuned into this lady that I loved, and I felt that I could felt her feelings actually, or who she was, and she was somebody who has a great passion about living creatures, especially birds. And I could see then that transfer to seeing the amazing energy flows on the earth. Birds go from place to place. It's a great. Well, in America, there used to be millions of bloody buffaloes and caribou, millions of them. It took days. Well, one person watching them, it took days to pass at that period. Days of them, to pass at these herds. So that was massive. I saw all this and felt this wonderful feeling how life flows and moves and such, and we do it on highways and so we're moving all this flow of energy, but then it transferred to that, and I was just without any body form, and I felt something rising, like a wave rising and falling, and as I was rising, the feelings became intensely pleasurable and falling down and falling, and I felt, I don't know if I'm right, but this is the magnetic impulses going around the world, waves of it going around, and I felt, God, I'm a creature of earth. I was created out of the earth by the power of the sun, etc. And that's an amazing feeling to see our connection with the earth. It was wonderful. It was really amazing. That was, anyway. So death, I feel, is literally. It's the meaning of life, actually. I think it's everything dies, everything bloody dies, and it goes through cycles, you know. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, death. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, death. And I feel that's true of us as well. Death is not anything to be frightened of. In fact, it's something to look forward to. Because when I was out on the body, I was really alive. I was vibrant. Every thought was, God, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And so when I come back to dead body, it was like, oh God, the weight of it. Anyway. That's a question. No, that is a great question, because that is a question for been used for thousands of years for people inquiring, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? You're not the personality. You are simply that wonderful consciousness that is in touch with everything, really. God. It's like being nothing, and yet it's you. You know, it's an amazing feeling. You're not any shape or anything. you're you. It's an amazing thing, because how did that happen? How can we be that little consciousness in that immense in that immensity? When I was 15, I took a course by a chap called Ousby, and he must have known what he was doing, because he said it was self-hypnotism. Well, it wasn't self-hypnotism. I practiced every day for 3 months for half an hour each day, passing my attention over and over body, you know, and passing over it all the time, and all the time, and all the time. And then one day I thought, I'd been out with friends, and I got back late. I thought, I shan't do it. I got into bed, and I said, no, I'll do it. I lay there. It's not just relaxation, see, it's letting go of everything. And that's the point of it. I didn't realise what it was at first, but you let go of your body, you let go of your digestion, you let go of your feelings, you let go of your speech, you let go of your personality, your face, you let go of it. And as I was doing that, my right arm disappeared. I mean, I had no sense of it at all. It was nothing. I thought, wow, wonder what that is. And then my left arm disappeared. My whole body disappeared. It felt like I fell through into the stars, and thoughts were a million miles away, you know, diddly down there somewhere, and I existed I was everywhere, and yet I was here. I was that little point of consciousness. Well, that's amazing. I mean, how can it be? And I didn't realise what was happening. But then afterwards I thought I had fallen asleep and maintained awareness. As a Buddhist thing, I think they tried to do that. And this guy had set me on that course, really. But I didn't understand it. I didn't know what to do from there. And so it took me ages to recognise what was happening. But that also is like I had died. I had existed out of a body, without a body. But it's an extraordinary experience. And when the time I thought, because I was only 15, I thought, bloody hell, this is amazing. How people don't realise they're much more than this bloody body or this, whatever. I was blessed to have that experience. But it set me on the path of wondering what the hell else is there? What else can you do? When I started working with people with self-regulation, you never know. Everybody's so different, and for everybody has a different experience. They're not the same because we've got different lumps of rubbish in us, and so they meet different things, and then we meet the blue skies. That's amazing. But so I worked with this woman who the doctor had sent her to me to help her relax, and so I started with how I help people to start self-regulation, where I found tension in the body and hold it there. And if you hold a tension, like my tension in the neck, it starts to shake you. And so I had this woman test it, arms moving. You move people's arms, if you move them, you get to a point where, whoa, they're resisting. I left her arms like that. And that was the first session, and nothing much happened. The second session was they start to shake. Third session was they came down. She spontaneously came down on the stomach. I thought maybe it's got something to do with masturbation. I don't know, but I don't know. I didn't interfere. I wasn't a therapist directing it. I was watching. The fourth session was amazing. Hands went down. She lay back. I went down on the floor and lay back. Her stomach boomed about up, boom. And I just wondered what the hell was going on. I just kept quiet and watched it. About an hour later, she said, "That was amazing," she said. She said that she had gone to Spain with two of her children, fell in love with a Spaniard, and she'd become pregnant with him. And she thought, wow, I'm not really wanting to marry him or anything, and I don't want this baby. So she had an abortion. And she said that that was life completing itself. She said that was me having the baby. I don't know if it's true, but I felt that abortion is you cut something. A life process is taking place. we think we're so clever. When people think, they say, "Oh, it's my body. I can do what I like with it." It's not their bloody body. They didn't create their body. Life created that. Bucky Fuller, a great person, he had an experience where he lost his daughter. He didn't have any money. He lost his job. He felt suicidal. He thought he'd throw himself in the lake of Ontario, where it is. And he thought, this is dog-eat-dog world. This is bloody dog-eat-dog world, this is. He thought, is that so? Is that really so? I want to find out. And he said then something got hold of him. It's like picked him. He said it picked him up off the ground. They're floating. And it spoke to him. And one of the things it said, this is not your body. Yeah, it's not. But you've got work to do. And it said, it left him with the feeling that if he could give, the more people he could give to, the more reward he could get. Anyway, he'd stopped talking for a whole year, and he realised that it was not dog eat dog world. It's the more we give to others, the more we get. And he produced this prefabricated house, well, they're easily built houses, and so mass of people could live in where they didn't have a house before. And so it was. I got the track. What was the question?
The question was, what is the craziest thing you've ever experienced?
Oh yeah, well, that woman was crazy, because I had witnessed abortion in my family, and it smelt horrible. I don't know why, but she came away and I could smell it. I didn't feel good. But then that gave me it's a crazy thing. Maybe cut off life, and I think women don't realise that if they have abortion, not that life didn't say, you bloody awful woman for doing that. It said, look, you cut me off halfway. It's not even your body. It needs to complete itself, and it completed itself in her, and she was fine after that. Yeah. Wow. Well, we're experiencing it all the time, actually, because we're talking about our ancestors. Our ancestors are parents and family back. And, oh, wow, this is an amazing thing, because I once had the dream that I was walking down this road in Italy. I was going to learn the language. I thought, well, that's not much of a dream, but I actually explored it, and it turned out to be an amazing dream, because Italy was the land of my forefathers. Oh, dear. We received so much from them. Anyway, I explored that dream, and I experienced, first of all, that I had kept my head down most of my life. And I got that from my father. And I thought, how did I get that from father? He never told me to keep my head down. How? And it's like bloody film plays inside of you, because I could see, we used to go to Covent Garden markets, and he was always so bloody quiet. And he didn't have his family name. He called himself Lawrence. So he was keeping his head down. I thought, wow. I've got that. I never vote for anything. I can't get involved with groups, anything. Why is that? And then it went on. Got it from his father, his father, way back, hundreds of years. And I don't know how it plays, but it's like, this is on a cassette or on a CD, as we call it nowadays. It's nothing, is it? It's just little blubs. But it's translated when you play it. When I was playing something, was an impulse that had passed through many generations. And it was translated into... One time, our family had lived in a time of such political and religious persecution that we decided we'll keep our head down. Don't tell anybody anything about yourself. Just keep quiet. And that's how they did it. But I saw also that some people didn't do that. They fought to keep on top with the winners, or they call themselves. And I saw that this is passed on. How did it pass on to me? Well, further, life is so full of information. He explained it to me. He said, look, all animals do this. They don't speak to each other. They copy. They copy, I copy, I copy. But without any words. And our parents pass on to us masses of stuff without ever a word. They pass on to us things that they don't even know themselves. They haven't got it in them. But perhaps some war had occurred and they have this habit and they pass on to their children. It's survival. It's how animals survive, how we survive. But unfortunately, some of the survival things that we're shown by our parents are so bloody awful. You know, because they're anti-survival or murderous, really. And my parents didn't pass on to me anything like that, but even so, it was a very negative trait, really, to keep your head down all the time. And I realised, God, this is what animals do all the blooming time. And my father never ever spoke to me much, so it wasn't through conversation or anything. But it said then, excuse the language, it said, the king, he said, he can't even fuck his wife. He said, and he's got these thugs he calls soldiers, you know, knocking us about, really, merging us. And so that was what was passed on. You keep your head down and you get your bloody head knocked off. But not only that, it was in Italy. And the thing is, that wasn't the worst thing. They kill your children. And so you... Your spine was cut, fucking roots. That was a tragedy. And so that's a message we try to pass on. But I've tried to reevaluate it and stick my head out a bit more, lift my head up a little bit. It's sometimes quite difficult, but we don't realise how, well, I never realised how deeply we feel things, you know. It's getting worse for me now because I watch films and I really feel what the person, they're only actors, but I feel it, you know. It's not awful because I don't find it painful or anything, but it's like you extend yourself outward a bit, I suppose.
Do you think that's good or bad?
I think it's a good thing because, well, another thing we don't realise is we're a mixture of not just one person. We're not just Tony or Quentin. We're a mix of many people. Because we take into us, well, we took our parents in, loads of stuff from them, but we take in things that we learn or appreciate or love from other people, animals as well. Well, for me, it isn't a bad thing because I feel that it extends my understanding of people. It extends it because what was it I saw yesterday? Oh, no, I saw it today. This woman had lost the person that she really loved, and didn't lose him, but he had to go because he was trying to do the right thing for her, but it tore her apart. I mean, I really. I never used to understand stuff like that. I thought, what are they on about, you know? But it extends one's awareness. And I've also, in working on dreams, I saw that people often dream about their mother and father. They think they're dreaming about their mother and father. They're dreaming about all they took in. They took in rubbish, they took in wonderful things. And and ex-boyfriends as well. Lots of dream heavily about ex-boyfriends. Well, we collect. I read recently that in a second we take in 4 million bits of information in a second, every second, but most of it we're unconscious of it. Now, living with somebody, we take in so much about their behaviour, their beliefs, whatever, and so we have an inner mother and father, brother, sister, or whatever, and they can play havoc with us. Well, one example of this psychologist, he had a road accident. I think he'd hurt his leg or something. Anyway, he's better. He was going into work, and he couldn't. Something happened to him. Oh, he couldn't walk. He thought, my God, what's happening? And he realised eventually that it was his brother. His brother had got polio as a young child, and he used to go with his brother swimming and all this. He'd taken that all in, but he was living it now because his leg was injured, so he was playing it all back. It wasn't his brother influencing him, it was his inner brother doing it. But when he realised it was free. But that's enormous influence it has on us. We're all geniuses. But we're all geniuses, but we stand in the way of it. You know, our parents program us to be little often. You know, we can't do that. You mustn't do this. Don't do that. Don't mess yourself. All that. But then that's one thing. But obviously, our body itself, for some people, it can't be a genius physically because it's they've got a background. But there's a wonderful story of this girl who. Born with brain damage, and all she could do was bang herself all the time, and all the time moving, and she came to. I mean, her parents were incredibly helpful. They gave her all sorts of therapy from professionals, but when she got a laptop, she started tapping out things, and at first they realised what the possibilities of this were, and then she could. They said, "No, you've got to tell us on here now. Tell us on here." That was bloody amazing. I mean, she said, "Look, I'm trapped." She said, "I'm trapped in this body," but. It's wonderful, that story, because it shows she had to bang her head all the time, all that stuff. She couldn't stop it, and yet she was inside there. She could express herself. That was wonderful, really. It's like me in the stroke. I thought, bloody hell, I'm trapped, but I can still feel and express, and. That laptop for her was one. She has a website now and tells about what it's like to be like that, But I think everybody's a genius. We got layers. We take a layer off a layer off a layer, and more of us comes through. Okay. You asking me now? Okay. I wrote this book about coincidences, and I had experienced coincidences. Well, coincidences occur in all sorts of ways. I think, for instance, my father one morning woke up. He's not a crying person. He was really in tears and really crying, and he realised that his father had died. His father had gone to Italy, and he saw his brothers flying, and he felt it so intensely. Now that's a sort of a coincidence because it didn't happen. He didn't know anything about it. When news came, you call that psychic, but it's a coincidence. So that happened. And that was early in my life. I saw it happening, experienced it. another very real thing happened to me in that I'm walking along the road that I've walked hundreds of times to get home. I'm near about 400 yards away from my home. And I'm walking along this road, the main road, and a car stops to turn right. And so I watch that, and suddenly I get this tremendous fear. The fear was so intense, it didn't, wasn't words, but it's more or less said, get into the hedge quickly. I got right into the hedge, and this car was screaming, tires started screaming. The car shot between me and that onto the pavement on this car. I thought, well, thank you. I don't know how that happened, but it was bloody amazing. Other things, though, coincidence, I feel people, they try to explain it in a very physical way. You know, they try to explain it through the physical body, which is not right, I think. But I see that we are immersed in the body in an enormous field of activity, of a consciousness in a way, and life lies behind all of us. Life as a function lies behind all of us, and that life is integrated. It integrates all of us. That's what I feel, and so in a sense, nothing happens that you can bring. Don't. Well, how does that happen? How does that happen? Well, it's directed. And I feel lots of coincidences are like that. It's not coincidental in that everything's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that you're here today in a way, but that was all right. We arranged that coincidence, but some coincidences are blooming extraordinary though. But one woman, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but maybe it is. She was hit by a car. She shot up 20 feet in the air, and she hung there. And then she dropped. And wasn't hurt by it, but she thought, did I imagine that? It can't be. It's impossible to stay there like that. And so she thought, well, I dismiss it. But a little while later, a woman knocked on the door. I think she'd left her handbag or something, and this had the address in it. This woman said, that was amazing. She said, I saw you there. You hung there. And then you dropped. She said, it was amazing. So that is an enormous coincidence. How did that happen? How did that coincide with that woman shooting up in the air? How did she stay there? What was that? But there's all sorts of things like that. Some people, I can't remember the details, but somebody rang up this person, and it was this woman. It was her boss actually, and he thought he'd got the wrong number, but he rang this woman who's employed by him, and was important because something was happening. But anyway, I've written so much about that. It's a fascinating subject, though. Some of them are blooming amazing. Well, the guy who wrote a book about the great ship that sank. What was it? The hit an iceberg. What was it? The Titanic. Now, he wrote a book before that. The size of the boat that had not enough boats for people, that it would go down, hit an iceberg. He wrote that all beforehand. And how did Jonathan Swift know there were two moons around Mercury? Nobody knew that. He wrote it in Gulliver's Travels, I think. Yeah. Anyway, but those things are extraordinary coincidences, if you call them that. But the in Africa there was a tribe of people who worshipped a planet, well, a star really. They didn't even know it existed, but then they didn't know what it was, but they said it was there, and then with giant telescopes we could see it. How did things like that happen? Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think it is because we live in a separated world here in the body, but we have enormous connections in that other level, and that level is so different, isn't it? It's time and space aren't the same at that level. This business of separation, of course, we feel we are separated in the body, but other people than I have said, look, we're like an island, and we have a periphery, which is the shoreline, but underneath that we're all connected. And that is exactly like I found the unconscious to be, because at times I've travelled in it, and it's an extraordinary place. Wonderful, really, because I could see there's no death at all. People get so het up about death. It's not that. It's like a mushroom shoots up above the earth. It creates itself, and that dies. I'm going to die. But the blooming stuff, mycelium underneath, is all lived for, one lot lived for 2,000 years. And that's what I saw. I didn't describe it like that at the time. I saw, bloody hell, we're all the time going up and down, and we're never really dead, really, never. Anyway, that's what I felt. Oh, and so, I see that we're all connected in some way, especially after death. Lots of people really realise their connection with us, but as they go to the different levels in the after death world, they are connected all the time. A friend of mine, Kevin, I don't know, I'm just reporting what I felt and heard from him, but I said, where are you now? Because for a while I followed his after-death experience. And then one day I called for him, he wasn't there. It was like calling an empty room, there's nobody answer. And I said, where are you? He said, well, I'm here with you. I said, what do you mean you're with me? He said, I'm living your life. And he didn't mean he was possessing me or anything. He was saying, I'm living your life as well as others. He was in touch with all of them, really. Oh, and this friend of mine sent me a description of, she was taking pot and feeling a bit desperate and suicidal, and then she suddenly had a visual experience through that dream world breaking through again. She saw this door as very with light, and she went in. It was this spiral staircase. She went up and up and up. It was a lighthouse, and there was a man up there, and he said, I wanted you to know what it's like when you die. He said, there's always somebody watching over you, and there's always somebody there who cares for you and wants to try to guide you. She said, do you mean I'm dead? He said, oh, no, not yet. He said, I'm just trying to... he said, look, it's like a lighthouse. It lights up everybody, really. We can tune into whoever we like, really. We live their lives often, I'm sure. Wow. Reality, God. Reality is what we make it. I mean, in a sense, how do we see, light? Well, something is radiated from there, hits my eyes, it touches the back of my eyes, it sends another signal to my brain. My brain translates that into that. What am I seeing? What is reality? I think one person is a very great psychic healer because he did amazing things. It proved in front of many people. But he said that he often, when he was healing people, he often left his body, his description, and he went up this hill, and then he went into the Summerland, or as he called it. And people said, well, what's it like there? Are you solid? And they asked him questions about what it was really like. What was it really like? So this time he went, and he went up top of it. He got into the Summerland, and he felt himself. He said, yeah, I feel very solid. I said, well, is the earth solid? He said, yeah, it feels solid. And his inner voice was guiding him. He said, okay, now close your eyes and imagine like you do when you go into trance. Now, where are you? He said, well, I'm not nowhere. I'm not even, haven't got a body. I said, okay. So I said, now open your eyes. What do you see? He said, nothing. He said, well, that is your life. He said, you create your reality. I mean, in a sense, we are in a collective reality here because we're not alone in whatever we do. Our beliefs, our actions, they're all tied in with everybody else. And so people say, oh, I'm doing my own life. Don't be ridiculous. You're all the time in a mix of actions and reactions. I mean, thousands, millions of people. Even though I've lived alone for, 18 years now, we're still in a mix of people, aren't we? Yeah. I've written some, but I'm a terrible person in a way because I never finish it. I wrote something about the counts, about somebody who found these ancient bodies locked in a bog, and they recreated them and created the people, or older people than that. So they had these people who just so primitive, they just about got self-awareness. And that was interesting because they had these little places they could go up and watch these people or be amongst them. And so this story was about somebody found a bog man, and he was a count, and he was he had a sword, and he had a very different view of what life was about. Anyway, they recreated him, and I didn't get any further than that, really. That one, but I love science fiction because when I was 13, I remember sitting on the doors on this curbstone, but there was steps, so we're sitting on the road. In those days, there was no traffic about, and we're talking about what do you think happens after death. And I said, I think something survives. I don't know if it's the mind or what it is. Talking about this, and then I came across science fiction. It's all played out. It was wonderful because they play with all these different ideas and make them reality. Some of the things I've loved were what great book was. What's it called? Oh God, I forget it. Time is the Simplest Thing. That was a great book. But I think if you get into it, you become you can meet an alien and feel okay about it. You think, oh wow, you might feel a bit, well, I don't know how to relate to this, but you okay, and travelling in space, God, wow. I did that once. I don't know if it was me projecting or what, but I thought I must go to the moon. I travelled. it was such an immense journey, and I didn't know that you could go there immediately. I was traveling. It got so bloody immense. Space was so immense. I was scared. I thought if I fall now, as if I can fall. But I closed my eyes and went back again. That was extraordinary. The space. But space is another thing. The stories I've read are wonderful. I mean, robots who are intelligent, who are like humans, etc. Wonderful. It enlarges your experience. I think reading and imagination enlarge the world 3 or 4 times more than you do in just living and just without imagination. You live quite a sheltered and unexpanded world. I think science fiction expands your world's possibilities. I've tried to write about this. What have I learnt? I've learnt that we are an amazing bloody creature. It's unimaginably complex and wonderful. We haven't. I'm just a tiddler really, exploring it, but it's beyond imagination even. We are immense and tiny all at the same time. Tiny little thing, a bug on the world, and we can't even. When we're up there, we can't even see anything. Not even that. On Earth, not even that much of it. We're like, moss growing on the earth, really. But at the same time, we come from an extraordinary past. I mean, the Big Bang says there was something before it. What was it? It's timeless, spaceless being. Or anyway, I experienced that timeless, spaceless being, and it created our universe. And it wasn't the only one. I felt there were others, and they were creating other universes, because I felt that being had a universe, a whole universe had united as one. They were all joined, and so it couldn't create anything other than itself, because it was everything, and it can, and it. I use the word alone, but it's just it wanted other beings. It wanted to create other beings. It wanted to share, and so it died. It had to die because it couldn't maintain itself. It had to die, and that's a Big Bang. It died, and every part of it is us. It's nothing that isn't us. This is fucking ridiculous, isn't it? We are gods. I think we're children gods, actually, but we are it. We got that potential. Look at what life did. It from a single cell, it gradually became multiple cells. It has immense, incredible potential. It could be anything. It could be an ant, a bacteria, a giraffe, a rhinoceros, a human being. It has immense potential, and that potential is still in us. And if we, I had another experience where I saw, or experience rather, that we could be anything, but or the potential of everything is in us. We could be a writer, a junkie, or drunk, or whatever, a murderer, but the potential of it is in us, and to make it real, we have to actually build it in, start building it into our life. That's what I saw. But we're multi-level. I mean, we got level after level. of what we are. I mean, language. Well, how did that come about? That we took that on. It's not us, and yet it's a part of us now, and we often expand it, say other things. But then there's our thoughts. What are they? God, that's amazing. What a brain, how it bloody works. The brain has got more connections in it, different cells, than there are atoms in the universe. God, that's amazing. We've got so much potential. That's another thing, the enormous potential we have. What else? Well, we think we understand what life is because we've been told certain things. We read about it and we think, well, we read it, it must be true. We think it. Our thoughts are simply photocopies. Because what is a dog? A dog. Oh, it's a dog. Oh, I got it. It's a dog. Wow. What is it? I don't know what a bloody dog is, really. But we got that word and we think we got it. Mother. Oh, what about my friend Jim? Oh, Jim. I know Jim. Go on with you. You don't really know. But these words, we take them so seriously, but they're nothing. Nothing. They're sounds that we make. And different languages use different sounds. So, they're just useful in communicating things to each other. I had this experience once where I was in bed with my wife and it felt like she was breathing heavily and I felt like, God, we're a bloody submarine. So all we communicate with is sounds, we call words, and we think we're understanding each other. How do we contact each other? Like a submarine, you can knock on it with a hammer and say, we're communicating. That's what life is like, really. We're not really communicating at that level. So there's other levels that we can experience. That's another thing I've learnt. Love is so misunderstood. People say they love each other. It's a crazy thing, but a mother sometimes can say that it loves its child because she's ready if she lets go of it. That's love. She's loved it and cared for it and letting go. People say they love each other, they get bloody terribly jealous. They got to rip each other apart. If they look at another fella or woman, what are you doing? You're mine. How can you be mine? How can anybody own each other? Anyway, we're like children, really, in our love life. What else? Well, I did define the levels of love at one time because I could see it from all the dreams that I worked on with people. I could see that most of us are actually, we haven't developed out of babyhood and emotionally. One guy that I saw, he came to see me, he said, I've got a problem. My wife, she said she's going to divorce me unless I change. I said, what's happening? Well, I said, if she talks to anybody, he said, I get terribly jealous. I said, well, when did you first feel that? Go, think back. He said, when I was a child. I said, well, you haven't developed beyond that. A 5-year-old. You're still a 5-year-old emotionally. Most people are that in their everyday life, in their love life, I mean. Anyway, that's another thing I found. What else? Too much, really. People, well, there's a tremendous downer on hallucinators, whatever it is, psychedelics. And yet, when they were discovered, they were given to psychologists and psychiatrists, and they were used professionally and well, and did amazing work with it. And then, of course, the blooming government was frightened of it or something. And it's just America put it down like that so everybody else could going to put down, which is ridiculous. Well, hopefully I see there's signs of it coming back, but it's they are wonderful tools. But of course, if you don't understand them, they can be. Well, I've seen people take it, so they're wondering about the words ridiculous. There's so much in us that we're missing. We could. I feel like they're like children again, And I've used hallucinations, psychedelics, I mean, sometimes, and they are amazing tools when used correctly. I mean, there's a book written about people who used it to explore a difficult problem that they couldn't solve. Designers, scientists, engineers, and one guy, he had worked in US on submarines, state work, and he couldn't solve it. He took that and he said you can see it from so many angles you never even seen before, but he was concentrating on that and he solved it, and it worked, and he used it being used in the government. But that is an example of what we can do, because people, they look around laughing about it. Well, it's fun if they want it, but there's so much more, so much more. Dreams, what are dreams, God? What is a cup, It's just a word, really. But my feelings about them are that they are one of nature's miracles, because life itself is a blooming miracle, isn't it? And dreams are products of our life process, and people see them as if it's some sort of imaginative thing we do. Listen, dreams occurred 20,000 years ago, 20 million years ago, sorry, in animals. Because they could see the animal dreaming. Probably occurred before that, but 20 million years ago, animals were dreaming. Why? They weren't trying to revive their everyday experience or trying to have sex ridiculously. Like some people, anyway, they think they can control their dreams. Well, they can to some extent. It's like controlling our blooming breath, or holding a breath, and you can only do it for a little while, but it's ridiculous. No, I think they have so many possibilities. They can tell you what's happening deep in the body, because doctors and scientists have found that often disease is shown in a dream long before they can diagnose it. They can, because we have a function where our brain or our memories or our consciousness all the time synthesizes what we've learnt. And so if we listen to that, we come up with wonderful creative ideas. That's another thing they do. They can enlarge our experience of everyday life, because people often don't have the experiences they do. I mean, recently somebody wrote to me about they were riding on a Pegasus, and they said it was wonderful. They felt so much love and wonderful. That was something they probably didn't usually feel. So it enlarges their experience. That's another one. There's about 10 or 11 things you can do with them, but I'm lost for words, actually, for what they can do. But they are, well, they can prophesy as well. I mean, one thing, as an example, my wife Brenda, when we had lived in Amersham, and we moved to Coomartin in Devon, and we didn't have a telephone, so there was no communication. And one of our friends was pregnant, and we had this letter say that this boy had been born and it was okay. And then Brenda had this dream of seeing this baby, and a voice behind her spoke to her and said, "This baby has got a problem. It will die because it needs a drug every day of its life." And the reason that it was born like this was because in the past life it committed suicide taking a drug. Wow, heavy stuff. So we tried to work out what it was, and we sent it to the wife and child. And we weren't on telephone. We waited for a letter to come back, and it came back and it said, "Well, you said that your dream, what you said about the dream, crystallises what we felt about the baby because it wasn't feeding very well. So they had to take it to the doctor. The doctor couldn't find out what it was. Took it to the hospital. They found out that it lacked an enzyme to digest calcium. It needed a drug all its life." Wow. That is blooming amazing. It tells about a past life, a present illness, without any information. Where did that come from? That's enormous. So that's another thing that dreams can do. They can, well, they told me my future really, because it seems to me that it's very true what I've been told in dreams. That's another thing. I forget some of the wonderful things that they can do. Well, often scientists, Einstein dreamt about going down this sledge. It got faster and faster, and he realised it was speed of light, and that he just kept that dream kept on and on at him. He kept looking at it, till he discovered theory of relativity. Another thing that can do. Another person dreamt of. He was trying to think of a sewing machine that could sew properly, and it was a problem with the needle. How do you do that? And he dreamt of these Africans putting him in a cooking pot and stabbing him with but one of them had a loop in it, and that's it. He did a loop in it. God, put the thread in there. That's how he discovered Singer sewing machines. There's all sorts of things that we can do, and people, they don't take enough notice of them. They're amazing things. What my latest dream? Oh, oh dear. Oh, no, that's not worth telling. No. Well, it's too complicated. Well, not too complicated. But no, there was one before that was amazing. I can't remember it though. No, the one that I actually dreamt was my bedroom is up here, I think, and my window looks out that way. And I was in the middle of the night, and suddenly the light went on. I thought it was probably an animal or something, but I was half asleep. And I dreamt that it was this alien woman who was covered in fur. She only had 3 fingers, but she's human, a female, humanoid rather. But she was very not scared, but nervous. When I looked at her, she started running off. I said, "Oh, don't go. It's okay. You can come in." And so I invited her in, and I felt like she had just trying to emerge to be human. She was an animal, really, but she had all fur, naked apart from her fur, and it was like I had encouraged this wonderful creature and given her care. It's a wonderful feeling, really. Yeah.